Hello. This is Taw Productions here. This is a video that I've been wanting to do for quite some time now. My first ranking video on the channel. And this one that I wanted to cover for quite some time. And I think it's time to do so. What will I do a ranking on? Well,
My little pony, my little pony.
yup. It's time to rank a franchise I have been wanting to do. All the Equestria Girls movies and specials from worst to best. And considering that it hasn't been done as much as most MLP ranking videos. So, I figured why not do one myself. For context, I got into this franchise back in April 2016. The first movie was my introduction to the franchise and my big exposure to MLP. I remember liking it back then. But alas, not everyone did. When the idea was announced, people were ripping the idea to shreds. From Lauren Faust's departure after season 2. And the fact that it came just after the show's big whammy episode at the time in the form of Magical Mystery Cure. This was at a time the fandom was very divided to the idea of Twilight being an alicorn. Thankfully, as the show went on, people became more accepting of the change. Though, not everyone did. And that applies to Equestria Girls. When the film was finally released in theaters on June 16, 2013. The film was met with a mixed reception upon Bronies. Some liked the film and others scathingly hated it and seeing it as nothing more than a cash grab just to sell toys, something Hasbro has done for ages. But I digress, and was criticized for either the story, as well as many other aspects. However, the franchise would see a light in the tunnel once Rainbow Rocks entered the scene. And ever since then, EQG became a little more accepted once the subsequent sequels came out. However, around 2017, a fifth film was up in the air, but never came to be. A big reason was that the 2017 movie was being made during Season 4's production, and with the big release they had on their schedule. The fifth Equestria Girls never came to be and instead we got an anthology series with the 3 magic specials. The whole franchise got retooled to a bunch of shorts on YouTube. As well as a mini-series with 5 half-hour specials. All in between season hiatuses. The franchise would mark its end once 2019 began to close with Holidays Unwrapped being the send-off to G4, that is, if we exclude the clip show series and Pony Life. However, there hasn't been confirmed return for the franchise or if it's getting a sequel series like with what G5 is doing and has mostly been left in the dust for a while. And with this year marking its 10th anniversary, I figured it would be a good time to revisit this franchise and see if it holds up or expired like Cardinal Milk. From the 4 movies released from 2013 to 2016, the 3 22-minute specials from 2017, and the 5-hour-long specials. It's time to see which one stuck out as the spin-off's crown or which ones got turned into demons. And for the record, I am counting Magical Movie Night as one special. So Dance, Movie, and Mirror Magic will be put on the same list. As for Holidays Unwrapped, I am counting all 6 shorts as one specials. It aired on the same day as each other and exist within the same continuity as each other. They will be one whole package. So, this is my ranking of all 10 Equestria Girls movies and shorts ranked from worst to best. On to the countdown. Roller Coaster of Friendship. Okay. Let me start off a little bit fair with this special. Despite the fact that it's at the bottom of the list, I will say that Roller Coaster of Friendship isn't the worst thing to come out of G4. Because if I were to watch this or 60% of the worst friendship is magic episode, I'd pick the former because I wouldn't say they were completely unwatchable, but this one deserves its last place ranking because there are so many glaring problems with this special. We can start with the fact that this entire special was just an excuse to sink Rari Jack as a ship. And while I don't have a major issue with that, this special does absolutely nothing with it, until the very end where they kiss and make up over arguments. And the sad part is that it was almost interesting with the idea of a friendship being split apart, with Rarity overworking a job for the parade due to an overbearing boss who demands perfection, similar to, say, Canterlot Boutique. But the problem is that this special barely focuses on and gives us very little reason to care about these two. Basically, unless you watched any of the shorts, you won't really even know. But even then, there are other glaring problems that makes this special really bad. Like the villain herself, Vignette Valencia. I hate her. For starters, I hate having to listen to her voice. She has one hell of an annoying voice, and every time she opens her mouth, I wanted to scream at her to shut up. On top of that, we can talk all day about how she is an obnoxious twat who concerns perfectionism, something done much better in a later special. In order to do so, she uses a phone that can trap people. First off, she's everything wrong with millennials. Secondly, her motivation boils down to, she has no friends. Like yet, every single other villain past Legend of Everfree by this point. The problem is that she acts like an overbearing flank who keeps bossing her employees around, treats them like trash, and tries to divide friendships for your own benefit just for likes. And this isn't like with another special where it was foreshadowed, or even if the first film where Sunset was blasted into submission. This came out at the last minute to give a lazy wrap-up, and it's all diluted to a single line. And worse yet, this was a formula that has long past worn its novelty. And there are other problems. Like how this has one of the most pointless pony-ups I have seen at that point. Seriously, not only is that something any of the Humane 7 could have done by grabbing it, but it was all used for toys. And that's not me being picky, even the writing team at Hasbro admits it. I also hate how everyone is made completely stupid that doesn't bat an eye to Vignette's behavior, and how they don't use their powers to not get sucked into a phone. Another plot hole is once everyone minus Rari Jack is in the phone. How do any one of the girls decide to look for potential exists, or better yet, if they were inside a blank room, why did nobody even hear them speaking? Everyone in here that isn't Applejack is made of stupid just for contrivance. It makes it one of the worst paced specials because damn near nothing happens but filler that either adds nothing to the franchise or is a waste of time. Also, don't get started on the White Room. Not only does it look like something you would expect on Animation Domination on Fox, but there were missed potential ideas. If Vignette can trap them in a phone, as well as make holograms of them as well, couldn't she put them in a background setting where they're in peril or in a multiverse situation? It doesn't even commit to that idea. At least something interesting would have happened. I swear, the lack of logic in these specials is impossible to sustain here. But there are a couple of pluses I can give here. I do like the other Humane 7 subplots. I found enjoyment in watching Sunset and Saichwi try to outsmart the Flim Flam brothers in a ring toss game, only the game to keep screwing them over. That was hilarious. Heck, I even like Fluttershy and Rainbow's moments in a roller coaster. I like how the tables are turned when the outcome happens. I can relate to this, and it actually reminded me of that SpongeBob episode where SpongeBob and Patrick are too afraid to ride the fiery first pain and they go on a small coaster. That got to me. And undeniably Applejack here is the best character throughout the special. I love how she's the only one who catches and suspects Vignette and the missingness of her friends. I like how she puts her detective skills here and stays focused. I also liked seeing AJ bring Rarity back to Earth to remind them of their friendship. This is what I like about EQG, it's how they do a better job handling Applejack's character than the main series ever did. So, it sucked, but at least it wasn't the absolute worst when you put it next to remainder of G4. So, hey, at least it wasn't completely terrible, but it was still pretty bad. And I have no problem putting it in last place on this list. Spring Breakdown. I'm going to be honest. Despite being the second worst on this list, I actually hate this special more than Roller Coaster of Friendship. I was so tempted to put this in last place because I kid you not 2/3 of this special was painful to get through. However, what ultimately prevented me from getting there was the admittedly the last third being actually interesting and finally kept my attention. For starters, this has to be the most annoying special of the bunch. Like the first 10 minutes already made this special worse than anything Vignette would have said. For example, most of the first half is Pinky screaming, and I am usually not one to complain here, but every time I kept hearing Pinky yell, "Spring break!" I swear my ears kept on bleeding. There's also a running gag with Applejack constantly getting seasick, and guess what? That's all she does to contribute to this special. One joke and it already got old very quickly, and seeing her be useless pisses me off because we've seen throughout the spin-off what kind of character she has. It feels like a big misrepresentation to Applejack. There's also a bit of a romantic subplot with Rarity and Ragamuffin, but compared to everything else in this special, I really couldn't care. But they were nothing in comparison to who almost killed this special, and it's not a villain here. It's a character here who made it almost unbearable to get through. If you took a wild guess that Rainbow Dash is this special's biggest sinker, you are correct. She was straight intolerable for most of the special. For starters, she never shuts up about a magic problem, and I swear that would be like putting up with a mantra in the car asking you, "Are we there yet?" Which is the last thing you would want your audience to be, annoyed. But all she does is ruin my and everyone else's enjoyment. She gets Pinky get kicked out of a buffet. She makes Fluttershy's animals very scared. And make AJ seasick even more. I swear they took her performance in Rainbow Rocks and said, "You thought that was annoying? Screw you. We'll show you annoying." And to think this would foreshadow something. And of course, this special tries to say that Rainbow was justified because they had to prove her right, but unlike the last special, where they used Applejack's detective skills usefully, all her assumptions were pitiful and end up with no barrier until the last minute to play hero. She made every scene painful to get through. And this is especially sad considering that Rainbow Dash is actually my favorite of the main 6 in the pony world. So, this special made it all the more slap-inducing. I also found absolutely contrived that they found yet another magic MacGuffin where now the portal to the pony world is through quicksand. They introduced it at the last minute and there are so many questions regarding it and they have yet to be answered. However, consider all those problems. The third act admittedly saved the special for me. Once we get to the pony world, I stopped getting bored and I actually got some enjoyment out of it. Actually, I wish we got more of this. I like seeing Saichwi getting adjusted to her pony form, and even got some hilarious moments like her reaction and trying to eat fondue. I also wished it was more true because the original name for this special was The Other Side, and Not Going to Lie. That would have been very interesting to watch. It could have been like a reverse version of the first movie where it's the humans being turned into ponies. Which did get the funniest ending in the special. It would have been a bit more unique and really shows the EQG was always canon to FIM but has a vast continuity. I also really like that nod to continuity from the MLP movie. I like how they kept lingers of the Storm King's magic, even after his death. I've always believed his magic was still there. That was some nice foreshadowing to the season premiere for the final season. I also appreciate that there is no villain this time around and we even get to see a new location. It's usually refreshing to see the EQG world stray away from the school setting. It makes it more varied and it was nice to see that. But overall, had everything that was built up to get to the rewarding part not been so painful to get through, this would have been great. But as it stands, this was only barely worse than the last place special and it couldn't be anywhere near the silver medalist towards the bottom half on this list. Don't worry, this list will start picking up eventually. We only have 8 more to go. Magical Movie Night, 2017. This could have been anywhere on the list because all three specials vary in their own quality but has both stuff I enjoy but some array of problems within their own specials. It's a string of 3 episodes that are about as long as the average Friendship is Magic episode. So, they have less to speak of. But on their own, Dance Magic is easily my favorite of the 3 specials. I like how this episode serves as a pretty good in-between period of Friendship Games and Legend of Everfree. This also marks the return of the Shadow Bolts. Except for Indigo's Zap of all things. Questions aloof. First off, for the positives. I like how the Shadow Bolts are portrayed. I like how despite what happened after Friendship Games, they actually do try to beat the Rainbooms at something. But unlike that film where they were under Cinch's control, so there wouldn't have been another option. They do it on their own. And I like how they give them a reason to do so. They steal an idea for a music video by directly copying what the Rainbooms did. But they don't come across as malicious or stupid. I also like how they give an equal footing as both the Rainbooms and Shadow Bolts are doing this for a fundraiser for their own school's enjoyment. I like it when both sides are in their positions without needing to villainize a side to make the other look good. It's kind of like Rarity Takes Manhattan, where Rarity presents ideas but Suri Polomare decides to backstab Rarity by stealing her ideas, as well as abuse Coco Pommel, and in that context, this special does it better on that front. Suri doesn't even apologize, she's just a meanie that gets no repercussions. And they do learn eventually to work together once they talk about the same situation. This made me like them all the more after them being underutilized in Friendship Games. And outside of that, it's also entertaining to watch. I enjoy seeing the different ideas the Humane 7 try to come up for a music video. Pinky being my absolute favorite. It was overall a very enjoyable first story, and good thing because the other 2 episodes are very, very flawed. Movie Magic is easily the worst of the 3 episodes. Mostly because this was the only that actually bored me. Aside from a cool Power Ponies reference, this special has nothing going for it. It's mostly the Humane 7 trying to find a culprit of who stole movie props on set. Surprise of the century, it was Juniper. But we already called that. And this carries over to Mirror Magic where her reasoning was beyond stupid from the fact that she was too young to be daring do, and just in this special. I don't like her, at all. There is so little to say about Movie Magic, that you want to skip over to Mirror Magic. And speaking of, and this special is actually pretty interesting, both for the right and wrong reasons. To get my cards out of the way, I actually like Starlight Glimmer. While I do get why people don't like her, I've always found her at least an intriguing character on screen. I'll take about that another time, but for the time being, let's just focus on this. One thing I actually like about this special is how it does a good job finally putting to rest on a certain debate in the Brony fandom that, let's just say, I have long past gotten tired of. It does a good job setting both Sunset and Starlight apart, and now Starlight is not a Sunset clone. It shows how both arcs are different, but how they work off each other was actually enjoyable to see. It made me happy they were finally doing this to, hopefully, shut all those whiners up. It's just too bad not everyone here complied. But sadly, all this good stuff unfortunately takes a back seat towards a certain character, and that was what I alluded to from Movie Magic. If you already hated Juniper Montage after Movie Magic, this special will make you hate her even more. For starters, she constantly blames everyone else for her mess up on set. She is a brat who gets mad that she didn't get what she wanted and never once takes any sort of responsibility. Every time she get put down by either the Humane 6, directly or indirectly, which what Juniper deserves. She decide to trap everyone in a mirror where they are stuck, and now that the mirror is breaking, that means she was about to kill the Humane 6. And get this, Starlight is the one who saves the day. I know many people address this as an issue, but when you stop to think about Starlight being useful would have been avoided because all this special made me ask, what was the point of bringing back Juniper? To have this be a lazy tie-in to have it all connect. If so, this one of the worst times I've seen it used. And of course, she gets a stupid backstory about not having friends, and gets forgiven yet again. Juniper single-handedly killed what could have been a nice Sunset and Starlight meeting special, as they were far more interesting to watch, and even that gets underutilized. This is the definition of wasted potential to meet higher-up standards at Hasbro, trying to get it out the door before their big break comes. Did I forget to mention that Juniper's demonic transformation bucking sucks? I needed to bring that up. To bring this to a close, this was a mixed bag of specials. I liked one of them, one was boring, and one left me so conflicted. This felt like backdoor pilots for an Equestria Girls TV show, and with what scene we could have saw more, back alas. They do serve as filler specials but could have been done better. They're by no means terrible, but if it weren't for Juniper and most of movie magic, this could have been good. But all this series of specials do is serve as a dark omen for things to come that marked the beginning of the end of Equestria Girls, and not in a good way. Holidays Unwrapped. Oh boy. This one hurts to put in the bottom half of the list. It really does. Because on its own, I found it mostly enjoyable. For the first half. To be honest, its ranking wasn't because for the 6 shorts themselves, because this special only has one problem and it's a big one. But let's look at the actual thing itself. Blizzard or bust. It was alright. On a light note, I liked seeing the Humane 7 try to create a snow day to avoid taking a test after an all-nighter. It was pretty fun to watch seeing them find ways, only to get outsmarted by Cranky. And the ending is well foreshadowed on how they learned precipitation and the water cycle in a test while not knowing about it. Saving Pinky's pie. This short is basically how far everyone takes their snowball fight while Sunset is helping Pinky deliver a pie to Rarity. Need I say more? The Cider Louse Fools. This one is probably my favorite of the 6 shorts. Despite this having the least amount to do with winter. I was surprised by how smart Saichui is in tricking the F brothers. Plus, seeing the F brothers dupe the Apple family only for them to get duped the same was fun to watch. Plus, this puts Flim and Flam in their most villainous role yet. You can't convince me that this was enjoyable. But unfortunately, it's all downhill from here. Starting with Winter Break-In. This short is all idea, despite how entertaining they were all around, doesn't full-on commit to it. And you could have seen this coming from a mile away. Sparkles 7 did this idea much better. Also, you're one to talk about breaking laws. Despite that both you and Sunset are living proof of that. Dashing through the mall. I like Zephyr Breeze, but good God. He's a terrible sibling. How does he not even know Fluttershy's interest at heart despite clearly trying? Though I do like how he gives the moral in the end, and at least he doesn't to flirt with Rainbow. Unlike his pony counterpart. And to wrap it all up with, oh come, all ye squashful. And this easily the worst of 6 shorts. While I liked the first half enough, the second half ruins it for me. I did not enjoy watching the Humane 6 get made fun and mocked for their costumes. Since when have ever seen Canterlot High act like a bunch of heartless assholes that would ruthlessly laugh out our characters? That was not funny, that was infuriating. If it was a character I don't like, it would be funny. But that isn't the case. Also, they could have avoided this as well, all by just heading to the gym and put on their costumes, or Applejack should have better worded herself. Though, I do like how it ends. They end it by saying their names, which was admittedly bittersweet. But man, did this spin-off end on a whimper. And you just heard that correctly. this was marked as the final thing to come out of EQG, as well as most of G4. And that is unfortunately, this special's biggest downfall. Despite the admittedly nice ending, it hardly felt like an ending to the franchise. If not, you can tell it was a rushed product from the get-go. Whereas FIM was very openly about its final season, Equestria Girls had no such fanfare. And the thing is that there was an ending in mind, but for whatever reason, Hasbro completely scrapped that and instead we got this. I'm more likely to believe that these were supposed to be YouTube shorts, but realizing that they needed to close the gates quickly, they choose to repackage them and calling it a quote-unquote special. And thus, this special ends on an abrupt note. Like in similar cases like say, the original Teen Titans or The Amazing World of Gumball. But unlike those shows do have a chance of a revival, Equestria Girls doesn't, because it's part of G4, meaning that it's part of a small generation of a much larger franchise. It can't be revived, and by the time G5 rolled around, there hasn't been a single mention of the human world, despite how much G5 wants to be a sequel to G4. So, all this was Holiday's Unwrap's undoing, and it caused severe damage to the Equestria Girls franchise. Because this spin-off tried too hard to do too little. This is the result we got. Maybe in the next few years, they will do so. But as of now, this what we got to live with. It's sad. So, on its own, it was mostly enjoyable, but as a finale all around, it was pretty disappointing that we ended with, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Okay. We're only at number 7 and I swear we'll start to pick up the pace. Legend of Everfeet. Yep, it was only a matter of time that something from the original quadrilogy would appear here. And also fun fact, this was the only movie that I actually own on DVD. Yeah, this film. Make of that what you will. But yeah, this is one of the better films. It's also not very good. There are parts one do like. For starters, I actually liked how they decided to give us a new location this time around. It's actually quite refreshing to see them divert from the school and explore other instances of the human world, and I'm glad they picked a camp as our first new location. And I'm glad later specials followed suit on that. I also like the new villain this time around. Gloriosa is probably one of the last few villains that I can actually call good. While I do agree that there were better alternatives, like a fundraiser or something. I do get why she had to use the geodes, and considering that Filthy Rich, at least in this world, wants to destroy the camp for his own benefit, which were from family generations. Something you can't destroy legally. And given how understaffed the camp is, with only Gloriosa and Timber at the helm, you kinda get where she's coming from when she turns to Gaia Everfree. She even gets a pretty good villain song. Though, it probably would have been better if Gloriosa went to trap Filthy Rich instead of the entire camp. Just saying. I also found Saichui's story actually interesting to witness. After the events of Friendship Games, she still endures the trauma of being Midnight Sparkle. I like how she isn't fully rid of it, and it appears at any possible opportunity. Whereas Sunset had to prove herself to rid her guilt, Saichui had to learn to overcome it gradually. And it feels like a refreshing take on it and did enough to make me root for her. Take notes, Scott Sonneborn. I also like how Sunset passes on from experience with Saichui, considering her past before. It shows how much far she came after Rainbow Rocks and Friendship Games. It was also interesting seeing how the girls are able to get their powers. However, despite all this, there are also a few things that prevented this film to be on the good half of this list. For starters, the pacing of this film is all over the place. This film keeps constantly adding subplots into the film, and none of them ever get fully realized. You also realize that this film is written by two writers, meaning that they both had different ideas for this film but had to cram all of them in one film. Whether it's Site-Wilight's trauma, the Humane 7 getting powers, a love subplot that should have never happened, Gloriosa trying to save the camp, trying to find the magic. This film's pacing is quite a mess, leaving the whole film to be relatively unfocused and disorganized all around. Also, am I the only who noticed that this entire film is a literal template from Gravity Falls and this film trying to capture the show's style? That could be a personal nitpick. But I also found Rarity's fashion subplot unnecessary and quite grating to get through. And while I give this film credit for finally deciding to give Flash some personality, it's too bad they don't utilize it enough outside of a couple of scenes, only for it to be dropped. And then there's Timber Spruce. Look, I get what they were going for with him. He's basically Flash Sentry if he more personality. But the one they went is pretty damn annoying to watch. I just personally never found him enjoyable, and his chemistry with Human World Twilight was pretty jarring. Yeah, justice for Flash Sentry. So, yeah. All around. This is easily the weakest of the 4 film, and yes, that does include the first movie. But hey, after everything we talked about so far, while it could have been a lot better, it also could have been a lot worse. And considering that we are now headed towards the good half of the list, this must be a sign of how good some of these other films are. And now we're finally finished with the first half of this ranking.